Hello, Storm Henk is here and it is bringing some wet and very windy weather, particularly to central and southern parts of the UK as we go through today, Tuesday the 2nd of January. I will have a quick look at Henk and also a greater look at what we can expect through the next few weeks. Little teaser, it's looking like it is going to turn drier but also a bit colder too. As well as that, I will have a look at the statistics from 2023 as they have just come out. But as always, thank you for joining me for this latest Met Office deep dive, the first of 2024. If you enjoy everything that I've gone through today, then make sure to hit the like button, share this video with anyone else who you think may be interested in it, leave a comment if there's anything you want to give us feedback on, and do hit the subscribe button so you can always stay up to date with our videos. But let's have a quick look at Henk then. Here is the satellite imagery from earlier on today. You can see heavy rain, particularly across central, southern parts of the UK, and we had some very strong winds as well. Now we did name this storm pretty short notice. That's because there was a slight change in model output. So as you will probably be aware, here at the Met Office, our meteorologists use computer models to help us forecast what's going to happen. And the latest model runs that came in this morning just strengthened the winds. The low pressure that is Henk isn't particularly deep, but it just intensified everything just that little bit and made the risk of those more damaging winds a little bit more likely, which is why an amber wind warning was issued, and as a result, the storm was given its name as well. Here's a quick look at the warnings that we currently have at time of recording. So ideally, we do issue the names of the storms much earlier. A couple of days lead time is best, but in this instance, that just wasn't possible. We did have warnings out already. We had yellow wind and rain warnings highlighting the risk of some disruptive weather, but we didn't go amber until earlier on in the day because of that slight change in the model output. And worth bearing in mind, lots of people still traveling, lots of people heading back to work today and back to school as well, and so that all played into the account, and that's what we took into account, when it came to the impacts that we were likely to see due to this storm. So a very wet and windy picture today. But what have we got to come? Well, if we look at the forecast going ahead, and I'll get rid of the jet stream and instead put our forecast rainfall and, well, possibly some snow on it instead. And let's run through the next few days. I'll hit play so I don't stand in the way, but you can see the area that is Henk drifting away towards the east, so we see the worst of the wind, the rain clearing away, the strongest winds really clearing away as we go through Tuesday evening. And then into Wednesday, it looks like it is going to be a blustery, showery day, particularly for much of England and Wales. Perhaps some stronger winds towards the far northeast of Scotland, some more persistent rain likely here, but a fairly unsettled picture continues for the next couple of days. And then into Thursday, our attention turns to an area, well, a system pushing its way up from the southwest. It tracks its way eastwards across the English Channel and is likely to bring some significant rain, particularly to far southern parts. I'm just going to pause it and dart back quickly if I can. There we go. If we go to the touch screen, lets me. And here, this is where the rain is likely to be in the south-southeast. So if I zoom in a little bit there, so the system's likely to push its way eastwards across the channel and affect southeastern parts as we go through Thursday, bringing some significant rain. Now, there is a bit of uncertainty as to how much rain and where exactly is going to be the wettest, and I can show you that with these charts here. So the charts behind me show forecast 24-hour rainfall accumulation for the UK, and this is for the whole of Thursday. On the left-hand side, I have the Met Office global model. In the middle, I have the ECMWF, so the European Centre for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, and on the right-hand side, GFS, the American model. What you can see is they're generally in good agreement that we are going to see a spell of very wet weather pushing its way up and pushing its way eastwards just to the south of the UK. The differences lie in the detail as to exactly where we're going to see the heaviest rain and how far north that rain is going to push. Starting off on the left-hand side with the Met Office model, you can see the rain, or the heaviest rain, really only just fringes far southeastern parts of perhaps Kent and maybe Sussex as well. Whereas ECMWF takes it all a little bit further northwards, and so that brings a greater chance of seeing some higher rainfall totals. GFS, the American model, somewhere in between the two, a bit flatter with the feature in as much as it brings more rain perhaps towards Devon and Cornwall compared to the other two models, but generally it's something in between ECMWF and Met Office model. I think at the moment, the Met Office model looks like it's got the rain just that little bit too far to the south. I think there's a greater chance that we are going to see a bit more rain than this suggests. So perhaps not quite as far north as EC, but probably at the moment EC is a better guide. And that brings the potential for 20 to 30 millimetres of rain, possibly even 40 millimetres of rain. So a pretty wet day, not exceptional, but coming so close to some very wet weather that we've had over recent weeks. The ground's particularly saturated, that could cause some issues. So it is likely to be a pretty wet day then. But let's look further ahead then. And if we keep on, and I'm not sure why my warning area was there, but it was. So we'll ignore that for now. I think I'd gone to the right place. Anyway, if we go further ahead, and I'm going to zoom out now. And as we go through Thursday then, so we've got this system, I'll dart through that, that clears away. Then the slightly changeable unsettled weather continues as we go towards the end of the week into Friday. Still plenty of showers around, low pressure, never too far away, a fairly flabby low, nothing particularly intense, but staying with that showery theme. But into the weekend, and it's this area of high pressure that's starting to build from the west, and it's high pressure then that is likely to become more dominant as we go through this coming weekend, leading to more settled weather across the bulk of the UK. Now, it's not necessarily going to be totally dry. There's a good chance that we will see a few showers fringing around some parts of that high pressure, particularly towards more coastal areas, but it is going to turn more settled, lighter winds than we've seen recently, and a lot drier, and also by day sunnier than it has been recently as well. So a real change in the forecast as we go through this week. As well as that, I wanted to highlight, before I drift on to the longer range forecast, because I will take a look at how long this high is likely to linger over the UK, I wanted to have a look at our freezing level. So here, remember, the freezing level is the height at which the temperature is 0 Celsius, and so at freezing. And you can see at the moment the greens highlight that the freezing level is currently around 1,000, 1,200, maybe even, or in fact 1,400 above, more than 1,400 metres above the surface. And so that's why it's quite mild across the UK at the moment, unsurprising with the wet and windy weather around. And so it's a mild picture for many, but very low freezing levels below or around the surface, not too far away over Scandinavia, where it is exceptionally cold at the moment. There you can see there's low freezing levels. And so something colder isn't too far away at the moment. Whilst most of the UK is under this much milder air with very high freezing levels, something colder isn't too far away. And when the freezing level drops, that's when we start to see something wintry, some sleet or snow. So bear that in mind for what I'm about to tell you shortly. But let's go back to what we can expect in terms of the forecast. So I've just highlighted that the weekend is likely to see this high pressure building in. So it is likely to turn mostly dry, a few showers perhaps. But it is also, actually, if I go back to the picture for this weekend, and if I put the winds on instead of the jet stream, and you can see we're likely to get a bit of a northerly, albeit generally under the influence of the high pressure. So the winds across the UK are looking pretty slack, but a bit of a northerly, and so that could allow something a little bit colder trying to push its way down. I just showed you there's some pretty cold air not too far away, but as a result we are likely to see our temperatures taking a bit of a drop, both by day and by night. So some cold frosty nights are on the cards and some chilly days, albeit with mostly light winds. But how long is this high pressure going to stick around? So let's have a little look at that. Here is the ECMWF pressure anomaly chart for the second week in January. So from the 8th of January all the way to the 15th. And what this shows is the pinks show where higher than average pressure is more likely. So you can see towards the northwest of the UK, much higher than average is likely. And even across the rest of the UK, albeit the signal gets less the further southeast you go, it does look like high pressure is looking more likely, or at least higher than average pressure. And I think high pressure is pretty likely for that second week of January. As well as that, in terms of the pressure, as you would expect with high pressure dominating, if we look at the same chart, but this time for precipitation anomaly, This shows that the oranges show that it's likely to be much drier than average as well. Again, this is for the second week in January. And so you can see particularly towards the northwest, western Scotland, likely to have significantly drier than average. And across the UK as a whole, it does look like it is generally going to be drier than average as we go through the second week of January. A real change to what we've had through the last few weeks. But then I mentioned the fact that colder air not too far away and changes in our wind direction, that will have a knock-on effect on our temperatures as well. And so looking at the same chart again, but this time showing the temperature anomaly, again for the second week of January, and the blues, as you would expect, highlight that across the UK it's looking like it's going to be colder than average, a good few degrees colder than average as well. Like I said, it's not going to be colder just by day but by night as well, and at this time of year we have pretty long nights. Factor in that there will be light winds because of the high pressure. We're running the risk of something a bit frosty or quite frosty, some harsh frost quite likely. We could even see some icy patches, particularly if we do get any showers pushing through at times. They could have a wintry element to them, so perhaps a little bit of sleet or snow possible. But even if it's just rain, when we get those cold nights, which we're likely to have, we're likely to see a bit of ice around at times. Worth bearing in mind that this cold spell looks like it could last for quite a while, at least a few days. And so that could have a knock-on effect on some people's health with some cold nights over quite a long period. As well as that, the ground's saturated, so long nights and this saturated ground from all the rain that we've seen over recent weeks means that fog is going to become an increasing risk. And so we've got ice, we've got frost, we've got fog, possibly some snow to watch out for. So although it is, from most people's point of view, good news that we have a more settled picture coming up with high pressure generally dominating, I know a lot of us are pretty tired and fed up of all the wet and windy weather we've had through recent weeks. And so for most of us it is good news. We do need to bear in mind that there will be some other hazards to watch out for. Obviously we will keep you up to date. We will issue warnings, particularly for fog and ice, if they are likely to cause significant issues. The other thing that we need to bear in mind is that whilst this is the general pressure anomaly trend, so pressure somewhere, high pressure somewhere over the UK, perhaps towards the northwest, slight changes in where that high pressure pushes in and settles will change the wind direction and where we're dragging in the winds. I mentioned before that there's exceptionally cold air across Scandinavia at the moment, and so whilst it's pretty unlikely that we'll have a strong easterly or anything like that bringing in that colder air, it's not out of the question. And so we just need to factor in all this when we're looking at what's to come, looking further ahead. Whilst we're on this topic, this time last week it looked like we were going to have a significant sudden stratospheric warming event, which you may well know can lead to some pretty exceptionally cold and hazardous wintry weather for the UK. Now, the signal has changed quite significantly over the last few days, and it only looks like it may just be a minor SSW event. And so, you know, that goes on a lot in alignment with the idea that generally high pressure across the UK and nothing too extreme looks most likely, but not out of the question. In terms of SSW, looking further ahead in the winter, well, you can't rule it out, particularly as we go later on in February. So that's one to watch. But for the time being, it doesn't look like there's going to be a significant SSW across, well, SSW, which is relatively good news from a hazardous point for the UK. However, we often say that there's high pressure on the horizon coming up and it never quite comes off. Often it does, but sometimes it doesn't. In this instance though, I'm pretty confident that we are going to see it. You may have seen this chart before. It's a forecast confidence index and it shows how high the confidence is in the forecasts that we're issuing. The reds show where the forecast confidence is lower than average, and the greens show where it's higher than average. We run from left to right in date order. So at the moment, confidence is a little bit below average for the, well, just a little bit below average. But that's not that unsurprising when we have low pressure and unsettled weather around. That's fairly normal. However, what you can see is as we go through this weekend, confidence actually increases. And it stays high as we go through at least the beginning half of next week. And in fact, if we look at the confidence for Wednesday, it's about the average confidence for Saturday. So about 4 or 5 days earlier is so the confidence for next Wednesday, when I'm saying high pressure is very likely, and yes, it's going to be chillier, but a lot of fine sunny weather around. the confidence in that forecast for next Wednesday is about the same as the average confidence for this coming Saturday. So it just goes to show that I think it's pretty likely, or very likely, we are going to see that high pressure dominating the picture as we go through next week and at least into the middle of the month. You can see confidence really drops off as we head towards like the end of next week and the following weekend. Unsurprising as we get too far ahead, but it does look like this high pressure does linger for quite a while and dominate the picture across the UK for a while. Now, I think that's everything that I wanted to say about the forecast going ahead, but I did want to mention what has already happened recently. This is a Met Office deep dive, and so I wanted to look at the statistics for 2023. Now, we have just released our 2023 statistics, and I think the headline from it is the fact that 2023 was the UK's second warmest year on record. This chart looks at mean temperature plotted since 1984, and you can see, unsurprisingly, there's a warming trend. Now, 2022 was the UK's warmest year on record. That was the first time that the mean temperature exceeded 10 Celsius. It reached 10.03. Last year, 2023, we got to 9.97. So not far off that, but not quite above that 10 degrees Celsius threshold. But an exceptionally warm year nonetheless. It comes after some very warm months. 8 out of 12 of the months in 2023 were warmer than average. June was the warmest June on average and the joint warmest September on average. Looking at Northern Ireland and Wales, they both individually had their warmest year on average, coming after 2022, which was also their warmest years on average. So for 2 years in a row, Wales and Northern Ireland have had their warmest years on record. Sorry, not on average, on record. And Republic of Ireland also had their warmest year on record as well. So 2023 was an exceptionally warm year for many places. For the UK, the second warmest year on record. As well as that, let's look at these maps, and this show that across the whole of the UK it was warmer than average in 2023, particularly across, like I said, Northern Ireland, Wales, also southwest England. Sorry, my little buttons are getting in the way for Devon, Cornwall and Somerset, but it was very warm in the southwest as well, less warmer than average for the northeast of the UK, but nonetheless it was warmer than average for the whole of the UK. If we look at a similar map, but this time this chart shows the rainfall anomaly for 2023 compared to average, and the browns for western parts of Scotland show where it was drier than average, but elsewhere you can see it was fairly significantly wetter than average. In fact, for the UK as a whole, we had about 11% more rain in 2023 than average, and some sites, Watnall in Nottinghamshire, for example, likely to have had their wettest year on record with some very wet spells. We've had a lot of storms coming through. It's pretty unusual for us to already be on the letter H with Henk coming today. So we had a lot of storms recently, bringing a lot of wet and windy weather. But worth noticing, I highlighted it already, but western parts of Scotland are a little bit drier than average. That's because more rain than usual has been coming in from the east. You may remember Storm Babette, for example, brought some significant rain to eastern parts of Scotland. More often than not, we get a lot of our wet weather coming in from the west, but we've had quite a few instances where it's been coming in from the east, which is why western parts of Scotland have been a little bit drier than average. But yes, the main takeaways from 2023 are the second warmest year on record. We have just issued a news release, so you can have a quick search for that if you want to see more statistics about 2023, because it was quite an interesting year. Wasn't just the UK though where it was exceptionally warm. The global temperature is likely to be the warmest year on record. So credit to Ed Hawkins, who creates these show your stripes images, which you can, if you Google or search for these, you can see areas for the country or area that you're interested in, and they show a warming trend as we go through the years. So the blues show the colder years, and it's got redder and redder, showing that it's getting warmer and warmer. And Ed had to point out that he's running out of colours because 2023 is now likely to be globally the warmest year on record, and he's struggling to find a way of illustrating it with this great chart. So just thought I wanted to highlight that to you as well. So that's most of my recap through 2023, and the last thing that I wanted to end this deep dive on was a little look at the tornadoes that we had last week. So this footage behind me is from Staley Bridge in Greater Manchester, and that was when a tornado hit last week. It caused a lot of damage, as you can see, with roofs being blown off, and that was caused by a supercell thunderstorm that crossed through the area, bringing some heavy rain, but these intense winds as well. As well as that, there was a confirmed tornado in Tipton, St John in Devon, which caused, I think it blew apart a 150-year-old tree, so caused a lot of damage there. And there are also, at the moment unconfirmed, but reports of a tornado in Gosport, Hampshire as well. So 3 significant tornadoes in just a few days. Now, tornadoes in the UK aren't unheard of. In fact, we get around 30 on average each year, but most of them are short-lived and pretty small, so don't cause much, if any, damage, and often go unnoticed. And so to have 3 significant, or 2, possibly 3 significant tornadoes in just a few days is pretty unusual and pretty severe. But I just wanted to show you that. So thank you very much for joining me for our latest Met Office deep dive. I'll leave you on the forecast pressure anomaly for the second week of January, showing that higher pressure is more likely, because I think that is welcome news for most people. As always, like I said at the start, if you have any comments, please do leave them. I will be going through them later on and replying to some of them. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed it, and share it with anyone who you think might be interested in it. And hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our videos as always. Alex Deacon will be back tomorrow with our 10-day trend, and he will be taking a more in-depth look into what we can expect as we go through this period of probably more settled weather. Otherwise, I will see you soon. Bye-bye.